You're sitting in a boardroom at Tesla and Elon Musk looks at you, straight-faced, and asks, "Should we produce 100,000 more Model Ys or cut production by 20% this quarter?" The numbers on the screen in front of you are complex: costs of batteries, labor shortages, global demand, margins, interest rates. The truth is, this isn't just accounting. This is the kind of decision that shapes the future of companies. And here's the twist. This is exactly what ACCA's management accounting paper is all about. But do you know the shocking truth? More than 70% of students fail this exam at least once. And the reason is not because they're not smart, not because they don't work hard, but because they approach this paper as if it's another math test. And that's the biggest mistake. ACCA MA isn't about crunching numbers, it's about making million-dollar decisions. And here's the hard truth. If you're still treating MA like a math test, you've already set yourself up for failure. I've seen students who solved 500 Kaplan practice questions and walked into the exam hall confident, only to walk out devastated because the paper looked nothing like what they prepared for. At the same time, I've seen students who focused on 100 carefully chosen, exam-style questions, who went in with half the effort but double the strategy, and passed in their very first attempt. The difference is simple: hard work doesn't pass ACCA. Smart planning does. Why do so many people fail MA? Let me break it down brutally. There are 3 silent killers. First, treating it like pure math. Students believe that if they memorize formulas, they'll pass. Wrong. ACCA examiners don't just want numbers, they want context, application, and business thinking. Second, ignoring theory. They skip through definitions, assumptions, and principles, believing they'll never come up. But examiners love to test the basics in tricky ways. Third, exam psychology. Students underestimate how examiners phrase questions, how they allocate marks, and how they expect answers to be structured. If you miss this, no amount of practice can save you. Let me tell you the story of Ali. Ali was a bright student, confident in his math skills. He spent 6 months grinding Kaplan questions, finishing every chapter, solving hundreds upon hundreds of numerical exercises. On exam day, he faced a question on marginal costing that asked him to explain, not calculate, the impact of reducing prices by 5% in a competitive market. He froze. His entire preparation had trained his calculator, not his brain. He failed. Now compare Ali to Sarah. Sarah didn't even complete half the question bank. Instead, she focused on past exam papers, examiner reports, and a handful of mock exams. She paid attention to the way questions were worded, the way marks were distributed, the way explanations mattered as much as calculations. She passed with 72% on her first attempt. Do you see the difference? This is why if you want to pass MA, you can't just copy Kaplan's week-by-week planner. You need a planner that's built like a business strategy, layered, multidimensional, and designed to prepare you not just for passing the exam, but for thinking like a professional. Think of it like 3 layers. The foundation layer, the exam layer, and the application layer. Let's start with the foundation. This is where you build concepts and mindset. Not formulas, but concepts. Marginal costing, absorption costing, budgeting, these are not just accounting tricks. They are the backbone of business strategy. Let me give you an example. Netflix and marginal costing. Have you ever thought about why Netflix can afford to let you share your account with 3 other people and still make billions? That's marginal costing in action. Once Netflix has produced a show, like Stranger Things, the cost of letting one more person watch it is almost zero. So the marginal cost of each additional subscriber is tiny compared to the revenue. This is why they can play pricing games and still dominate the market. If you can't connect marginal costing to businesses like Netflix, you'll never see the true power of this subject. Then comes the exam layer. This is where examiner psychology comes into play. Do you know that ACCA examiners often phrase questions in a way that traps students who only practice mechanically? For example, instead of asking you to calculate variance, they might say, discuss the implications of a favorable variance in material costs for a company like Apple launching a new iPhone. The moment you read that, you realize, it's not just numbers, it's about applying the concept in context. You need to understand the why, not just the how. Past exam papers, examiner reports, and practice CBE mocks are your weapons here. You need to train your brain not just to calculate, but to think. Finally, the application layer. This is where management accounting comes alive. Every single topic in MA is being used by billion-dollar companies every single day. Decision making: should Amazon open a new warehouse? Variance analysis: why did Apple's iPhone sales miss expectations in Q4? Limiting factor decisions: how should Tesla allocate scarce chips between different car models? These aren't just exam topics. These are real boardroom discussions. And when you train yourself to think like this, suddenly, the exam stops being an exam, it becomes a business simulation. And let me tell you another story. Meet Jane. Jane was working full-time and only had 2 hours a day to study. Most people in her situation would give up, thinking they don't have enough time. But Jane passed MA in her first attempt with 76%. How? She focused on exam psychology, not textbook repetition. She didn't waste hours memorizing formulas. She trained herself to think like the examiner, to structure answers the way they wanted, to allocate her time per mark. 1.5 minutes per mark, no more, no less. She used spaced repetition for revision, and she prioritized computer-based mock exams because she knew the real exam wasn't on paper. The result? Success with half the study hours of her peers. That's not luck, that's strategy. And this is where most students go wrong. They cram, they overpractice, they ignore theory, they hope that the night before the exam, all the numbers will somehow stick in their brain. But here's the reality: passing MA isn't about what you know, it's about how you show it. It's about writing short, structured answers. It's about applying concepts to scenarios. It's about demonstrating to the examiner that you're not just a calculator, you're a decision maker. Let's put two students side by side. Student A follows the layered planner, foundation, exam, application. Student B sticks to Kaplan only, grinding questions every day. Student A spends less time, but their study is precise, focused, examiner-driven. Student B spends more time, but their study is mechanical, repetitive, unfocused. On exam day, Student A scores 68%. Student B fails with 48%. And the painful truth? Student B worked harder, but Student A worked smarter. Now let's connect MA to real-world businesses in a way that most teachers never do. Think about Starbucks. Every time Starbucks sets a target for how many cups of coffee to sell, that's budgeting. Every time they compare actual sales to expected sales, that's variance analysis. Think about Amazon. When they decide whether to offer free delivery on certain products, they're using cost-volume-profit analysis. Think about Tesla again. When they have limited chips and need to decide whether to allocate them to Model 3 or Model S, that's limiting factor decision-making. These are not abstract formulas. These are real strategies shaping billion-dollar outcomes. And if you don't see the connection, you'll never fully appreciate what MA is really about. This is why the worst mistake you can make is thinking that solving 500 questions will save you. Stop solving 500 questions. Start solving the right 50. Because in this exam, precision beats quantity. So let's put everything together. MA is not about math. It's about decisions. Smart planning beats hard studying every single time. And the students who focus on business application, not just calculation, are the ones who pass. If you're still wasting time on mechanical practice, you're not just failing the exam. You're failing to prepare for the real business world. And here's my challenge for you. Drop the word planner in the comments if you want me to break down a real student's MA study schedule, step by step, right here on this channel. Because at Education Bench, we don't recycle Kaplan. We don't give you generic advice. We give you the mindset and tools the top 10% of ACCA students actually use to pass, and the mindset CFOs use to make billion-dollar decisions. That's the difference between average and exceptional. That's the difference between passing and failing. That's the difference between being a student and being a professional.